And this is a direct attack, to be clear, a direct attack on the very workers that I stood in front.
Leaders of some of America's biggest trading partners, said another way, some of America's closest allies, are reacting and preparing to retaliate this morning, now after President Trump announced 25% tariffs coming next week on all cars shipped to the United States.
Trump's decision to impose tariffs on goods from foreign countries was one of his most controversial moves as president. But why did he do it? In essence, tariffs are taxes on imports, designed to make foreign goods more expensive and encourage consumers to buy domestic products. President Trump argued that such a policy would protect American industries from the unfair practices of other nations, particularly China. His administration claimed that China's trade practices, from intellectual property theft to the unfair devaluation of their currency, had led to a trade imbalance that put the U.S. at a disadvantage. At the heart of the trade war, China was a primary target. In 2018, Trump imposed tariffs on over $250 billion worth of Chinese goods. This sparked a fierce reaction from China, which retaliated by imposing its own tariffs on U.S. exports, particularly targeting agricultural products. For example, China imposed tariffs on soybeans, a major U.S. export, which caused serious economic distress in Midwest farming communities. But the U.S.-China trade war was not the only conflict that Trump's tariffs sparked. His move also rattled U.S. allies like Mexico and Canada. As two of America's closest trading partners, both countries had reason to feel the pinch from Trump's trade policies. Mexico, for instance, had to contend with tariffs on steel and aluminum, two key exports. Similarly, Canada, which relies heavily on the U.S. as an export market, saw tariffs on goods ranging from lumber to dairy products. In fact, both Canada and Mexico retaliated almost immediately. They imposed tariffs on key U.S. exports, including bourbon whiskey, peanut butter, and motorcycles. These retaliations not only harmed specific U.S. industries, but also set the stage for a global trade conflict, leaving many wondering if these tensions could escalate into something far worse. The most recent chapter in Trump's tariff saga came in 2025, when he announced 25% tariffs on imported cars and auto parts. On the surface, this seemed like a move to protect the American automotive industry from foreign competition, especially imports from countries like Mexico, Canada, Japan, and the European Union. Trump justified these tariffs by claiming that foreign-made cars posed a national security threat, an argument that many analysts found dubious. The economic repercussions of these auto tariffs were immediate and severe. Experts have projected that car prices in the U.S. could rise by $5,000 to $10,000 per vehicle. The ripple effect from these tariffs is significant. From higher car prices to potential disruptions in the automotive manufacturing process, the fallout could be felt across the entire economy. In fact, economists warn that the average price of a new car could spike by up to $20,000 due to the increase in parts costs. This is particularly concerning, as American consumers have already been dealing with rising costs of living and stagnant wages. The tariffs have a direct impact on U.S. automakers as well. Many of the parts used in U.S. car production come from abroad. For example, a significant percentage of the auto parts used by manufacturers like Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler come from places like Mexico and China. When these tariffs are imposed, automakers are forced to absorb the costs, passing them on to consumers. This is a lose-lose situation. Consumers end up paying more, and automakers face the challenge of reducing profit margins. Moreover, the tariffs could stymie the efforts of U.S. automakers to compete in international markets, where foreign automakers will still be able to sell their products at competitive prices, unaffected by Trump's tariff policies. Additionally, the used car market in the U.S. will likely see its own inflationary pressures. With new car prices soaring, consumers will be forced to turn to used cars as an alternative, driving up prices in that market as well. For many families who are already struggling financially, the increase in car prices could have long-term consequences on their purchasing decisions and ability to maintain their vehicles. In the wake of Trump's tariff announcements, the global financial markets reacted with extreme volatility. In fact, Trump's tariffs on steel, aluminum, and now automobiles have been described as the catalyst for massive stock sell-offs. According to reports from Seat Raid Maritime, the announcement of these tariffs triggered a sharp decline in global stock prices. Investors, worried about the broader economic implications, scrambled to sell off shares, particularly those related to industries most affected by the tariffs, such as manufacturing, automotive, and technology sectors. On the U.S. stock market, the effects were equally striking. The S&P 500, a key indicator of the health of the U.S. economy, saw sharp drops, particularly after Trump's announcement of the auto tariffs. Global market uncertainty is a critical concern for investors, as the tariffs threaten to disrupt established supply chains, especially in the automotive and steel industries. This led to concerns that the global economy could be heading toward a slowdown as the tariffs increase the cost of doing business and reduce the global flow of goods. However, the stock market's reaction was not uniform. Some analysts believe that short-term panic over the tariffs could give way to more stable long-term growth. Others, however, point to the volatile nature of Trump's trade policies and suggest that this economic uncertainty could persist for years, especially if the trade war continues to escalate. In the broader picture, some countries are also at risk of suffering economic slowdowns due to the ripple effects of these tariffs. Emerging markets, in particular, face the threat of currency devaluation, inflationary pressures, and lower growth rates as they become embroiled in the trade conflict. Global supply chains are becoming increasingly fragmented, which could lead to disruptions in production and logistics, further exacerbating economic difficulties. Now let's talk about the real-world consequences for consumers. The tariffs imposed by Trump's administration are not just affecting the upper echelons of the economy, they are hitting everyday consumers hard. The cost of living in the U.S. has been steadily increasing, and the imposition of tariffs on goods such as cars, electronics, and raw materials only makes things worse. Americans are already dealing with wage stagnation, and now they are facing higher prices for basic goods. Within hours of the policy rollout, Ferrari said it will raise prices by as much as 10% for some models to compensate for the tariffs. This isn't just a temporary increase. Long-term car price inflation could price many buyers out of the market entirely, especially those in lower income brackets. The ripple effects also extend to the used car market, as demand for pre-owned vehicles increases, leading to higher prices across the board. But the impact doesn't stop at cars. Tariffs on goods such as steel and aluminum could lead to higher prices for construction materials, appliances, and even electronics. Consumers may find themselves paying more for everything, from washing machines to smartphones. The increases in prices are likely to be most severe for households already living paycheck to paycheck, as they will feel the effects more acutely than wealthier Americans. Looking ahead, the future of global trade is uncertain. Trump's tariffs are undoubtedly having a major impact on the U.S. economy. But what about the rest of the world? Will countries like China and Mexico continue to retaliate? Or will they come to the negotiating table for a deal? Will the tariffs cause permanent damage to global supply chains and international relations? One of the key questions facing the world today is whether the global trade system, as it currently exists, will survive these kinds of unilateral policies. Free trade has been a cornerstone of global economic growth for decades, but Trump's tariffs represent a stark departure from this model. The future could see a fragmented global trade system, with countries choosing to protect their own industries rather than cooperate on a global scale. New trade alliances may emerge as countries band together to counterbalance the U.S.'s aggressive tariff policies. But the real question is whether this will lead to greater cooperation or further fragmentation. What is clear is that Trump's tariffs have left a lasting mark on global trade, and nations will have to find ways to navigate this shifting landscape in the coming years. The global economic landscape is undergoing significant transformations as nations respond to President Donald Trump's recent tariff announcements. Canada, a long-standing ally of the United States, finds itself reevaluating its economic and trade strategies in light of these developments. Concurrently, investors worldwide are flocking to gold, viewing it as a safe haven asset amidst escalating trade tensions and market volatility. In the wake of President Trump's announcement of 25% tariffs on auto imports, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney has articulated a firm stance, indicating that Canada is prepared to implement retaliatory measures. Carney emphasized that Canada's response would be strategically designed to maximize economic impact on the U.S., while minimizing domestic repercussions. He stated, "We will fight the U.S. tariffs with retaliatory trade actions of our own that will have maximum impact in the United States and minimum impacts here in Canada." Highlighting the gravity of the situation, Carney remarked that the traditional economic and security relationship between Canada and the U.S. may have irrevocably changed due to these tariffs. He noted, "Nothing is off the table to defend our workers and our country." To bolster Canada's economic resilience, Carney is advocating for the removal of internal trade barriers, aiming to enhance domestic trade efficiency. This initiative includes harmonizing regulations and establishing common national standards, with the goal of reducing trade costs by up to 15% and potentially boosting the economy by 4% to 8%. The announcement of new U.S. tariffs has sent ripples through global financial markets, prompting investors to seek refuge in gold. Gold prices have surged to unprecedented levels, with spot gold climbing to a record high of $3,077.56 per ounce. This surge is attributed to heightened demand for safe haven assets, amid fears of an escalating global trade war and its potential economic ramifications. Analysts suggest that the confluence of trade uncertainties, potential interest rate cuts, and geopolitical tensions has created a favorable environment for gold. Kyle Rada, a financial market analyst at Capital.com, observed, "Gold has the wind at its back at the moment. U.S. trade policy, U.S. fiscal policy, geopolitics, and a growth slowdown. Everything is blowing in gold's direction." Investor sentiment is further bolstered by the anticipation of continued central bank purchases and a weaker U.S. dollar, both of which contribute to gold's appeal as a hedge against inflation and currency fluctuations. Some analysts predict that gold prices could reach $3,100 per ounce, with ongoing trade tensions and economic risks supporting this bullish outlook. The unfolding trade disputes between the U.S. and its major trading partners, notably Canada, are reshaping global trade dynamics. Canada's strategic pivot towards reducing dependence on the U.S. and seeking alternative trade partnerships signifies a substantial shift in North American economic relations. This realignment may have long-term implications for supply chains, investment flows, and geopolitical alliances. Simultaneously, the surge in gold prices reflects broader market sentiments of caution and risk aversion. Investors' flight to gold underscores concerns over economic stability and the potential for inflationary pressures resulting from trade-induced supply constraints. As central banks and institutional investors increase their gold holdings, the precious metal's role as a cornerstone of financial security is reaffirmed. In conclusion, Trump's tariffs have created significant tensions between nations, pushing countries like Mexico, Canada, and China into retaliatory stances. These decisions have already caused stock market instability, price hikes, and economic slowdowns, affecting both businesses and consumers. The auto tariffs, in particular, threaten to disrupt the automotive industry and leave everyday consumers with higher prices for both new and used cars. Looking ahead, the future of global trade seems increasingly uncertain as countries grapple with the long-term consequences of these trade wars. What is clear, however, is that we are at the precipice of a new era in global commerce, one where economic protectionism could become the norm. Thank you for watching today's video. Please like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more in-depth analyses on global economic issues and their impact on the world. These decisions have already caused stock market instability, price hikes, and economic slowdowns, affecting both businesses and consumers. The auto tariffs, in particular, threaten to disrupt the automotive industry and leave everyday consumers with higher prices for both new and used cars. Looking ahead, the future of global trade seems increasingly uncertain as countries grapple with the long-term consequences of these trade wars. What is clear, however, is that we are at the precipice of a new era in global commerce, one where economic protectionism could become the norm. Thank you for watching today's video. Please like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more in-depth analyses on global economic issues and their impact on the world.